The year is 1978. The setting is likely Mexico City, somewhere in its sprawling southern expanse, a working-class neighborhood humming with the lifeblood of a nearby market. Here stands an ordinary house, utterly devoid of spectacle. Its facade is unremarkable, its large corrugated metal door designed for a garage, not for the theater of the impossible that unfolds within. Someone has taken care to line this door from the inside with yellowed polyester sheets, synthetic roofing tiles that diffuse the harsh sunlight and obscure the view, shrouding the interior in secrecy. Outside, a line of people snakes along the sidewalk. Their collective presence speaks of a quiet desperation. Some sit on folding chairs brought from home, others lean heavily on crutches, their bodies testament to ailments that conventional medicine has failed to remedy. Inside the home's courtyard, the atmosphere grows thicker with anticipation and sorrow. More chairs hold more people, their faces etched with the unmistakable masks of illness, discomfort, and chronic pain. The family members who accompany them wear expressions of weary concern, their hope a flickering flame against a wind of despair. Deeper inside, a doorway leads into a room plunged into near-total darkness. The only illumination comes from the soft, unsteady light of a few candles and votives placed upon a makeshift altar at the far end of the space. Upon crossing the threshold, the senses are assaulted by a complex mixture of odors. A fetid smell, the scent of organic matter in decay, hangs heavy in the air. This is cut by the sharp, antiseptic aroma of rubbing alcohol and layered with the waxy perfume of melting candles. The room is a void, but as the eyes adjust, shapes begin to emerge from the gloom. A crude wooden table stands in the center, a simple rectangular slab covered with a mattress of expanded polystyrene foam. Over this foam rests a single sheet of clear polyethylene plastic. This is the operating theater. In a corner, away from the waiting patients, sits a solitary figure on a rustic wooden chair. She is an older woman, perhaps in her late 70s, short and somewhat stout. She wears a classic Mexican apron, a checkered pattern with large pockets at the front, the kind used in countless kitchens. Her hair is unkempt, and a vibrant orange cloth is draped across her chest in an unusual fashion, reminiscent of an ancient tilma, once used by the indigenous people of Mexico. As a new visitor enters, her voice, surprisingly strong, cuts through the silence. "Come in, little brother," she says. "Come forward. We were waiting for you." The first patient is then brought in. There is an established order to the proceedings, a hidden logic to the chaos. Ailments of the eyes, afflictions of the bone, maladies of the internal organs, all are treated here. So, too, are those who believe they suffer from curses and malevolent spells, though their treatments are reserved for another time. Today is for physical healing. The first case is a young man, wheeled in, his body completely immobilized. A devastating accident has fractured his vertebrae, severing the spinal cord and cutting off the neural pathways from his brain to his limbs. He is paralyzed, a prisoner in his own body. Medical operations have failed. Metal rods inserted to support his spine have proven useless. With considerable effort, his family members lift him and place him face down on the crude operating table. The elderly woman approaches, requesting cotton and alcohol. Each patient has been instructed to bring a clean white sheet. She forms small balls from a bag of ordinary pharmacy cotton and cleans a section of the young man's back. Then she takes up a large knife, an intimidating blade resembling a hunting tool. Without hesitation, she places it on the young man's back and makes a single deep incision, 20 centimeters long. Blood flows freely. She then begins to manipulate the tip of the massive knife around the vertebrae. An eyewitness to these events watches in stunned silence as the skin is parted, the tissue beneath peeled back to reveal the spinal column itself. The sight is enough to induce vertigo in the strongest of stomachs. This rustic woman, with no aseptic measures, no anesthesia, and no apparent medical training, has just laid open a man's back. The patient does not cry out. His paralysis leaves him without sensation from the neck down. The woman parts the tissues further, exposing the fractured bone. There is the fracture, she declares with certainty. She asks an assistant for a jar, a simple glass container that might have once held jam or mayonnaise. Reaching inside, she pulls out an unidentifiable substance, places it over the fracture, and uses the handle of her knife to tap it firmly into place. Then, with a swift, inexplicable motion of her hand, the wound seals itself. Her assistants place their hands over the area in a process they call saturating, not suturing. A moment later, the young man's leg begins to twitch. He is then wrapped in his white sheet and moved to a corner of the room to rest and gather energy. He will be sent home with instructions not to move for 3 days. The next patient is an elderly man, at least 80 years old, skeletal and frail. As he enters, the woman's voice changes, taking on an unusual tone. "Little brother, what is wrong with you?" she asks. A relative explains that he cannot eat, that doctors have given him no hope. The old man is laid upon the same table, on the same uncleaned plastic sheet. The massive knife reappears. This time, it opens his body from the base of his neck to his sternum, exposing the esophagus. The woman forces her hand inside, searching for something deep within. After a moment, she extracts a mass and throws it into a nearby bucket. She then repeats her mysterious hand gesture, and the wound is gone. The witness, who would later recount these events, swore he saw the esophageal tube open and bleeding, blood spraying in all directions. At one point, he felt a splatter on his face. In a bizarre turn, the woman then moves to the man's lower body, takes his genitals, and makes a gesture with the knife near the urethral duct. Seeing the shocked faces around her, she smiles. "Well, we have to fix other things too, right? We do everything here." Afterward, she passes her hand over the area again, and all that remains of the massive incisions is a faint scratch. The old man sits up, and the woman, in a commanding voice, calls for a piece of hard, stale bread. When it is brought, the old man refuses it, terrified. He couldn't even swallow soft foods before. "Don't be stubborn," the woman commands. "Eat it." Trembling, his eyes wide with disbelief, the old man obeys. He takes the hard bread, tears off a piece, and swallows it. The onlookers gasp. He takes another piece, and another, until the entire roll is gone. Amidst a strange atmosphere of laughter and awe, he is wrapped in his sheet and moved aside. Then comes the most harrowing case, a 5-year-old girl. Her parents explain that a mistake with anesthesia during a routine tonsillectomy left her in a vegetative state. She is unresponsive, her consciousness locked away. The woman smiles, caressing the child's head with affection. "If he wants," she says to the parents, a departure from her usual certainty, "he will let her live." The child is placed on the table. The knife appears once more, this time cutting through the scalp. The witness, a man of science, knows precisely what he is seeing. The scalp is peeled back, exposing the skull. The woman then takes a brutal tool, a saw like one used by a plumber, with no semblance of sanitation. She begins to cut through the bone of the child's cranium. Under any normal circumstance, this act would be fatal, causing death from shock, brain damage, or a subsequent raging infection. Yet it happens. She performs a series of manipulations with her hands, placing something unseen into the opening. A sound like suction is heard. She then replaces the piece of skull, repositions the scalp, and makes her closing gesture. She asks everyone to saturate. Looking at the parents with deep concern, she says, "No, this is not so easy. It will have to be done several times." That afternoon, the girl, previously lost to the world, begins to smile at her mother. One might dismiss these accounts as fantasy, as elaborate hoaxes performed by a masterful trickster with a cast of actors. But the identity of the witness precludes such easy dismissal. The man who narrated these events was not a casual observer. He was Dr. Jacobo Grinberg Zilberbaum, a doctor in psychophysiology from the New York Medical College, and the woman performing these impossible operations was Barbara Guerrero, better known as Pachita, a Mexican shaman whose fame would eventually circle the globe. Grinberg was an exceptional witness. His journey began at the National Autonomous University of Mexico, UNAM, where he first studied physics, building a strong foundation in mathematics. But his restless mind was drawn to psychology, and within that field, to the specialized branch of psychophysiology, the study of the organic neurological basis of human behavior. He was fascinated by the interaction between mind and matter. His brilliance earned him a place to study for his master's and doctorate in the United States, where his research garnered numerous accolades. Upon returning to Mexico in the 1970s, this man of science, deeply curious about phenomena that defied conventional explanation, began his own investigation into Mexican shamanism. He was a formidable intellect, organized, brilliant, and multilingual. He had met the famed mushroom shaman Maria Sabina, experienced the effects of peyote, and studied the works of Carlos Castaneda. Through his academic connections, he met Margarita López Portillo, the sister of Mexico's then-president. Impressed by his charisma and intellect, she introduced him to Pachita. The encounter changed the course of Grinberg's life. Days later, he was in that dark room, witnessing the surgeries he would meticulously document for months until Pachita's death in 1979. Grinberg was not a magician, but he was a trained scientist. He saw not one, but countless operations, cancerous tumors removed, organs repaired. He confirmed incredible stories, such as that of two sisters from New York, diagnosed with terminal tumors, who were healthy and thriving 2 years after being treated by Pachita. For an inquisitive mind like Grinberg's, this was a catalyst. How did these patients not die from shock or septicemia? How could this woman, claiming to channel the spirit of the Aztec Emperor Cuauhtémoc, materialize functional organs? In one instance, an organ removed by Pachita was taken to a lab and confirmed to be not only human, but belonging to that specific patient. A profound interaction between mind and matter was occurring, one that science could not explain. This led Grinberg to establish the National Institute for the Study of Consciousness at UNAM, funded by the Mexican government. In his laboratory, he acquired sophisticated equipment to measure what he believed was happening in the minds of these extraordinary individuals. He embarked on a series of groundbreaking experiments. In one, known as the transferred potential experiment, 2 strangers were placed in a shielded Faraday cage, isolated from all electromagnetic interference. They were guided through a shared meditation. Then, one subject was moved to a separate, isolated room. The subject remaining in the cage was bombarded with controlled flashes of light and sound. Astonishingly, the brainwave patterns of both individuals, monitored by electroencephalograms, registered the exact same activity. The subject in the silent, dark room was experiencing the stimuli being applied to the other, with no physical connection between them. Grinberg theorized this was evidence of a non-local connection, a shared field of consciousness. In another experiment, he studied a shaman named Rodolfo López. While López entered a deep state of ecstatic trance, his brain showed 3 times the coherence and activity of a normal person in a similar meditative state. His mind was not shutting down. It was operating at an extraordinarily high level. Grinberg's work culminated in his Syntropic Theory, a complex scientific framework suggesting that reality as we perceive it is a holographic lattice. Every point in this lattice contains the information of the whole, and consciousness is the faculty that can interact with and modify this fundamental structure. Pachita, he believed, was not creating organs from nothing. She was accessing this lattice to modify reality itself. But this revolutionary work, which positioned him at the very edge of science, also made him a target of harsh criticism from his peers. And then, on December 8, 1994, Dr. Jacobo Grinberg vanished. He was last seen on that day. He and his new wife, Teresa, were planning a long-awaited trip to Nepal. When he failed to appear for appointments, his family and colleagues assumed he was preparing for the journey. His wife told some that he had to go on an urgent trip to Campeche. She told others it was Guadalajara. On December 12th, his birthday, she called his stepmother with the same story. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. When no word came, the investigation finally began, revealing a web of deceit and mystery. Grinberg had never made it to Nepal. No tickets were ever purchased. The police investigation focused on his wife, Teresa. On December 13th, she had called his lab, telling everyone to take a holiday vacation. She had cashed a $1,000 check belonging to Jacobo. On December 24th, she was seen at their country home in Morelos with a foreign woman and a man with a military bearing, removing personal items. On December 29th, she emptied their Mexico City apartment, despite the rent being paid for 3 more months. Then, she too disappeared. The investigation revealed Teresa's entire identity was a fabrication. The credentials she claimed as a psychologist were non-existent. Her own family was unaware she had even married. 5 months later, she was briefly located in Rosarito, Baja California, before vanishing for good. The police found no evidence of foul play in Grinberg's homes or cars. In a nation rocked by political assassinations and an armed uprising, his was a disappearance with no body and no clues. The case took another bizarre turn when a man from Boulder, Colorado, called into a television program featuring Grinberg's daughter. He claimed to have seen Grinberg months after his disappearance, getting off a small plane on a remote road, accompanied by U.S. government agents and driven away in 2 separate cars. This aligned with leaked information that Grinberg had been making frequent, unreported trips to the United States, often to Boulder, and that his wife Teresa accompanied him. The official investigation was abruptly closed. Several theories persist. Did Teresa, a jealous and volatile woman, murder him? Did Grinberg, a master of consciousness, simply transcend this plane of reality on his own? Or was he abducted? His research into mind-matter interaction, telepathy, and non-local consciousness would have been of immense interest to intelligence agencies. His work was a potential key to the very goals of programs like the CIA's Project Stargate, which sought to weaponize psychic abilities. It is plausible that Teresa was not a simple psychologist, but a clandestine agent tasked with monitoring and perhaps extracting the scientist whose work could change the world. A final, tragic footnote adds to the mystery. Months after the disappearance, 2 of Grinberg's researchers visited the shaman, Don Rodolfo, asking for his help. He promised to go and look for him in the other reality. 2 weeks later, Don Rodolfo was dead. He had attempted the journey and never returned. Today, Jacobo Grinberg's work remains unfinished, his whereabouts unknown. He was a scientist who dared to bridge the gap between the empirical and the mystical, and in doing so may have uncovered a truth so profound that he was erased from the world he sought to understand.